Hello and welcome everyone to Insights. My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Thank you so much for joining us.
Imo State will be our focus on this episode as we count down to the weeks and days, of course, to the D-Day, which is November 11th for the state governorship elections there. We will discuss various angles to the election in Imo State whilst we gauge the general preparations towards a largely credible exercise come November 11th. It won't be just me all the way, as I'm sure Elizabeth has something else in store for us. Elizabeth?
Of course, I do. You know, recently we've had so much coups in Africa, from the Sudan crisis to Burkina Faso, Gabon, and then the latest Niger crisis. So we decided to examine the patterns of transitions in Africa, factors responsible for leaders not willing to hand over power when due, and the role of democracy in ensuring smooth transitions.
That would make for an interesting discussion. Well, let's kickstart the program. I'm fascinated with the discourse on national monuments and assets and how much is being done to preserve and
look into the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values.
It's not cash transfer. It's not a COVID-19.
Invasion 1897 was a deliberate tactic.
You know, many of these people coming to the urban areas now.
These and applications, there are terms and conditions that
of course it is the union of two people, a man and a woman coming together.
My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori.
If you recall the 2019 governorship election in Imo State, and you probably followed events leading up to the Supreme Court verdict of January 14, 2020, then you will definitely understand why Imo State has been getting a lot of attention with regards to the November 11 governorship election there. Of course, there are other reasons as well, but let's talk about insecurity, for instance, and then we talk about political related violence. I mean, these are issues that are at the top of the shelf when it comes to Imo State and the upcoming elections there. My guest is a public commentator and a professor of languages, literary and international studies. He is the immediate past director of research linkages at Imo State University, Owerri, Professor Valin Emeka Obinna. Welcome to Insight, Prof.
Thank you very much. I'm highly delighted and honored.
Great to have you. Glad to have you join us, Prof. Prof, I have listened. In fact, I have watched numerous commentaries and read as well commentaries on the upcoming Imo governorship election, and it has been overwhelming for me, I must say. But for some reason, it comes to bear that the power of perception over reality in public affairs is enormous, especially when we talk about the elections there in Imo State. Maybe that is why some of the candidates in the elections all want to prove a point. And I'll begin with Governor Opuzodinma and what points he may or may not want to prove with winning this particular election. Maybe at the first ballot, maybe at the second ballot. We don't know how things will swing or go, but let's see. What do you think is that point that he may want to correct, that, public perception that may have been created arising from the manner in which the 2019 elections ended, because of course we know it was determined eventually by the Supreme Court. Do you think the governor might want to correct some public perception and perhaps make a point or prove a point?
Thank you very much. Are you putting me in the place of the governor to think for him and talk for him?
No, not exactly, but I'm thinking...
Public perception, you say?
Yes, public perception. Yes.
Well, the way it happened in 2019, and I'm sure that people always refer to that, even when he himself mentioned the John Benson way, from number 4 to number 1. Therefore, he has an opportunity of doing it in his own stride, this time that he's going there, and to prove people wrong, possibly that what happened then was a mere coincidence of certain factors. So I think that people would think generally, as they have thought, that he came from behind to become number 1. And therefore, he would like to prove the point this time, going for a second tenure, that he is the person that is accepted and acceptable in his own way and manner. So I would think that if people have had misgivings about the way he came up, that he became a Supreme Court governor, as people were calling him, he will now want to say that he's the people's governor going into the polls. And so with all the challenges, surrounding, I'm sure he would like to prove that point. And it is the way people will now perceive it, that it will happen on November 11th. So I think that there's a second chance somewhere for him.
Prof, what do you think he's got going for him? I mean, considering the fact that he's an incumbent, I mean, one would say maybe that could also be a factor in this election. Or what do you think are the strong points or the strength of his current campaign? I'm sure you're monitoring events, as it were, there in Imo State. What do you think the governor has got going for him as far as this election, November 11, is concerned?
Well, the power of incumbency is always there. He is already there, and he would like to continue to be there. And trying to slam the slogan of continuity and performance. He points to certain achievements in terms of road construction, for example, and some of the programs he has tried to carry out, especially recently about the health, program he has tried to launch. So I believe that he is talking about them and asking people to confirm what he has done, pointing at some of those achievements. And then, like somebody who is holding the power, he's holding the yam and the knife, for example, right now. He has a lot of advantages. And in terms of campaigning, he has a lot of machinery and a lot of financial muscle. And he's using that to a lot of advantage. So those things are what I think he has going for him. And you can't take it away from him the way it is, even though others. Well, I don't want to talk about others. You have not asked.
No,
about
I would ask you about others, Prof. I would ask you about others, but let me just quickly say that, and this is how our people say it in Igbo, that Oye Jimma Gigi, he who has the knife and has the yam knows to cut. But the point and the truth is that it's actually the electorate, the people, the voters, who have the knife and who can cut the yam in whatever size they want to cut. And that will happen November 11. But now let me take you to the other parties, Prof, and their candidates. And I mean, how do you think public perception is riding on them? And what points are do you think they are possibly each trying to drive in to prove? Let's take up the PDP and then maybe we'll move on to Labour, then ABGA and the others as well. So let's start with the PDP first, before we move up to Labour, ABGA, and the others. So, Prof, PDP?
Okay, so just like you said, the people are supposed to have the yam and the knife. They are supposed to have it. Maybe the governor is holding part of it from incumbency. Now, going to the other party you mentioned, PDP, I think that ordinarily they should be the main opposition. They should be the main opposition. From the position of your guests, that opposition, their position is a bit shaky in the state, even though they are trying to overcome so many factors within them. There has been a lot of wrangling, so to say. Some people view the candidate as not really serious, in the sense that he has been the national secretary and the candidate. But I know he has given up that position, so maybe that argument may have frittered away. But they believed that he was holding on to the secretaryship because he wasn't sure. Now that he has left it, maybe he can now come out fully to say, I am the candidate of the party. And then when the former one-time governor and gubernatorial candidate was there, Chief Emeki Hedioha, left the stage of coming back and has been a bit quiet. People said the position of the PDP candidate for governorship has really been whittled down because Chief Emeki Hedioha has not quite come out to support him, so to say. So that perception has been that there is something, wrong in PDP. But I think that they have tried to rally round somehow, try to gather themselves together to still begin to punch the governor from points of view of insecurity and some of the, hiccups of governance and people not being quite carried away from the perception of APC. PDP has tried to latch onto that Imo State is a PDP state from time they point to the past, and therefore they try to hold on to that.
Okay.
So, but PDP is, I think, is also struggling, except that their campaign has been a little, not quite publicized, except when they came and launched it, and they have tried to come out not quite openly. It seems there's a handicap from the point of view of what campaign they have to follow by paying some reasonable amount of money that is not as small as that. So PDP per se has a lot of challenges of proving to the people that they have a candidate to beat, and they are saying it on their own that Sam Daddy, as they call him, is there as their man who will be in the government house.
Yes, so let's move on to other parties now. Labour Party, perhaps, and what points they may be trying to prove. Do you think they can still ride on what happened in the February 25 presidential elections? Can they still ride that wave, or the wave has since them flattened out?
Well, Labour Party is still riding on that, so to say. I can tell you, they have always used the name of P2B as a rock for them to move on. They have really gathered a lot of, positive impression from the Imo people and generally from the Southeasterners. So they have always hooked onto that. And they have a candidate also, I think, is also strong, very strong, even though he has one arm, but he's a one-arm general, the Hachono senator. And he has gone around trying to prove that he's the incoming governor. He says it here and there. He has campaigned here and there, but I think he has had a lot of internal challenges also, where one or two candidates have come to claim the gubernatorial position. It has been a lot of in and out of court, trying to prove who is the rightful candidate. But I think INEC has given Senator Chono the position recently, even though we still have some little kicks and pricks from inside the party. So I think that basically they mentioned the name of P2B, and he has even come also to, support the campaign of the senator. And the senator himself, Achono, has also used the same campaign, throwing stones against insecurity and some of the little lapses of governance in the state, and how the governor came in and trying to prove that he himself will come and make it, and he has the experience, and that he has seen from a businessman's point of view, and being a senator that he has experience. So he has gone around campaigning. I think he has campaigned quite widely too.
Prof, let me just quickly take you along, and then we can talk about ABGA, because I mean it's a party you cannot discountenance in the southeast. In fact, the party has a sitting governor there in Anambra State, not so far from you, there in Imo State. I mean, what point would they be trying to prove there in Imo State come November 11?
Yes, ABGA also can claim to be the party of the Igbos and the Southeasterners. They have their roots in Ojukwu, Emeka Ojukwu, and the roots of the Biafran territory. ABGA will tell you that they have something in their own foundation and roots. And of course, they have a governor, just like you said, in Anambra State. So they have something, they say this is our own. This is our own party. They want us to believe that is their own. So their candidate is also a strong person. If he happens to be from my hometown of Emekuku. And he's going around also trying to prove himself as a person and somebody who has a kind of a tradition in his family of politicians who can come out in the state and make it from the Ejogu dynasty. I'm sure you may have heard about the Ejogus, Ambrose Ejogu stock and all that. So he is also strong in the game, and of course, he's also using the same campaign strategy of what lapses they may have found in the incumbent governor's own regime. So all of them.
Yes. I mean, Prof, I'm sorry to interject there, but I'm sure all of the parties we've talked about and the other, because there are like 17 of them participating in these elections,
yeah,
if I'm not mistaken, yes. I'm sure they would all be hoping to prove a point come November 11, and then we'll keep monitoring them. I want to talk about something that I consider one of the biggest issues also in the upcoming November 11 governorship elections there in Imo State, and that's insecurity, or rather should I say security. It becomes pertinent to review, you know, how and what has been happening in the state, and whether or not some of the issues or insecurity issues, whether there's a connection between the upcoming election and the spate of security breaches or increases in security issues that we've had in the state. Prof, in your opinion, do you think there's a nexus between any likely surge or increase in unrest and insecurity in Imo State? Maybe you could date it back a couple of months, or maybe date it back as far as a year ago, when the political gladiators began to make their move. Would you say the security situation has some election-related angles, or maybe substantially so? And what role, I would also like for you to speak to this, what role you think parties, candidates, and the political class can play at this point to reduce the tempo enough to ensure that it does not lead to voter apathy?
Well, the issue of security, which seems to be the same as insecurity now, is quite there. The nexus is there. We have been talking about insecurity, security matter for quite some time, beyond months. And by the time it looked like the jailbreak in the state, you know, created an atmosphere of more confusion in unknown identity. We have heard of a lot about unknown gunmen, and people joke with that, unknown men and all that. So many things have really happened to the extent that in some parts of Imo State, people had to keep away. You know, they had to quit their homes in places like Orlo or So Axis and all that. That area, it is difficult to really venture there. You know, people virtually have left their homes. And so you wonder whether elections can really hold there, even with the security preparations, the Inspector General, you know, trying to give an impression of beefing up. I don't know if, even if the military apparatus is put there to take over the environment in terms of election, whether you will see the human beings that will come out there to vote. And that is one problem. If you can reassure people of their security and you bring all the armory to guard the place and say people are free to come out and vote, the people are not even there now, except something happens to take them back there within this, I think it's about 2 weeks now from today. And
yes.
So for people to be reassured, even in other places, you need that military presence, but that causes another problem of people looking at it as a war situation that we are overflowing.
Exactly, I was going to ask you there, Prof, if it isn't a delicate line that will be treading there, because there's also the issue of militarizing the election. I mean, there cannot be, there's nothing like enough security for an election, and I get that. But there's also the danger of showing excessive force, and even if that's not likely to impact the mental states of eligible voters and prospective voters there in Imo State.
Yes, added to that is the idea of so many people that there's no need even coming out. And if you see more military people around, then you say stay in. Who knows? And that is another problem, to convince people that they should come out freely where you have a lot of military presence, which ordinarily should reassure them. And now, ordinarily, people should see the security people as there to protect them. But intimidation becomes another thing, and propaganda against the idea of using the military. Some people believe that the powers that be are bringing them in, you know, to scare people away, even to do what they want to do. And then added to the issue of apathy already, people are not feeling too comfortable to feel that they are going to vote and their votes will count. So it's an uphill task to convince people, but we're trying to say, let us try it, and they don't believe so much in the process of INEC. Many people are doubting, And we have a lot of challenges to say, please, if INEC has come out to even confess that they had glitches and hitches, maybe they want us to give them a second chance, since this is an off-season kind of election and the people are watching. And
Prof,
we are trying to...
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. My director just informed me that our time is almost up. But I need for us to talk or discuss the political dynamics in Imo State a bit more and look at the balance of power between the different zones and the clamor there in Imo State for what they call the charter for equity.
Of equity.
Yes, the charter for equity. I mean, this speaks to the issue of balance and fairness in the rotation of the leadership and governorship of Imo State. It does seem like the Olu axis has not just the political strength and sagacity, to dominate, but then isn't that to the detriment of the smaller numbered zones and definitely what the other slightly disadvantaged zones are crying about? Can you put this in proper perspective for us, and very quickly too, because they just told me to begin to round off. Can you very quickly just speak to this issue before we close, and tell us why you think the clamor for this charter of equity, it might be justifiable, considering those clamoring for it?
Well, I think basically those from Owerri zone and Okigwe are using it against the incumbent governor too, that Olo has dominated and they're going for 20 years and 24, whereas others have been talking about just a few months with Owerri zone and 4 years with Okigwe zone. So it's been a problem. So when we talk about the charter of equity, some people are saying that what the governor is trying to talk about equity after him may not be equitable, that it doesn't seem that they should allow him to complete 20 and 24 years, stay in another 4 years to make it 8. So the Owerri zone and Okigwe zone are not looking comfortable about it to allow for an Olo person to come. But the incumbency factor is there, that the governor says, please allow me to finish this term. After that, the Owerri zone and Olo zone will now have their turn of equity. So it is a pointer that something is not quite at ease, and that we have a lot of assignment to do in order to correct it.
Prof,
somehow.
But Prof, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 of the major candidates in 2 or 3 of the major parties are from the same Olu zone.
Yes, they're there. And even some people from Olu zone are saying, even if you say in 2027 that is for Owerri zone and or Kigwe zone, and that Olu should not come, that they are entitled to come out. So you cannot stop it, because power is given and not taken, as they say. So they keep taking the power. But let us say if a change, we are praying that it will be corrected.
So if a change has to happen, if this rotation or this charter of equity is to work, it has to be intentional, and it has to even get the support of the current administration in power there, and that is the current governor contesting in the election.
I agree with you. We have to agree, even if we are disagreeing for now. We have to come to agreement. We must agree somewhere.
Very well, Prof. I look at the figures of especially the last 3 elections there in Imo State, the governorship elections, and I'm slightly worried. We do not have time to talk about them, but I look at the election in 2011, and I look at the percentage of voters rather that participated. It was put at 45%. Subsequently, there was a slight increase in 2015. It rose to 46, and then there was a significant drop in 2019, where it dropped back to 37%. And I'm hoping that won't be the trend come November 11. I'm hoping we would see.
I'm hoping along with you. I'm hoping and praying that people will come out, because what happened recently, it may be dangerous. Some people have even destroyed their ballot papers. And
well, Prof, let's hope for the best.
So
and
let's encourage everybody to come and try it again. Right. Let's give INEC another chance.
That's right. Professor of Languages, Literary and International Studies, and immediate past Director of Research Linkages, Imo State University, Owerri, Professor Avali Nemeka Obinwa. Obinna, I beg your pardon, not Obinwa. Obinwa was my former boss, and his name rings as in anytime I see something that sounds that close. Obinna.
Thank you.
I beg your pardon. Thank you so much for coming on the program, Prof.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Moving on, while still talking about insecurity, I'd like to look at it from another angle. There are several profound reasons for the advocacy against the proliferation of small arms and light weapons, chiefly because of the nexus between its diverse impacts and development. Within the context of national development, we are talking about conflict, peace, and security, and how all of these impact governance and society. Let me bring on my next guest, or rather my guest at this point. He's the Acting Director General, National Commission for the Coordination and Control of Proliferation of Small Arms and Light Weapons, NATCOM, Dr. Adegbenro Adejare Nuruddin. Welcome to the program, Doc. Glad you could join me to discuss this issue.
Thank you.
Great, Doc. For decades now, we have talked about mopping up small and light weapons, and you know what? I don't want to go into the data or the statistics as it concerns Nigeria, because I'm sure you're conversant with all of those details and the figures. The worry, substantially, is the obvious deficiency in the reinforcement capacity of those responsible in the control of illegal movements of arms in Nigeria. Why has our seeming integrated approach to this issue suffered substantially, so much that even now it is clear that as a country we're sitting on the ticking time bomb?
Well, the problem we're having in Nigeria, as you rightfully said, we're sitting on a ticking time bomb. Well, if you look at the whole security architecture in Nigeria, is 1.3 something million personnel. And out of that 1.3, you have 40% or 50% being held by VIPs. So, and for a country that has over 200 million people, if you look at the average, you can see that there's a shortfall in terms of manpower. Right now, police is the highest manpower that we have, and followed by my commission, which is the National Commission. We are 274,000 personnel, and obviously we're going to grow more upon our assent from the president. We plan to now go way more than that. But the key thing is, all the security agencies are trying their best. But these people come up with new ideas, new technology, and you can't take the fact away. We have very porous borders. People can walk in and out of your borders. They can take Okada, they can take the sea, and so really, until when you get all these things in place, you cannot really stop these people. Then comes the issue of what do you do when you catch these arms and light weapons and ammunition. In Nigeria, it's always done that, okay, they find it, they burn them. They burn them and somehow it resurfaces into the market. You get what I'm saying? Because it is very simple. Any gun or any bullet that you find or you seize has a barcode in it. Technology has gone too wide. And if you put that barcode, it will show you the country that manufactured it. Nobody seems to go to the country that is manufactured. Nobody seems to go to ask, who bought this thing? Who shipped it? Who are the shippers? You go to the shipping agent that the consignment is shipped on. That is for the ones that come with sea freight, because it hardly comes with air freight, because obviously it is harder for you to smuggle anything by air freight. So technically, you look at it that there's something missing there. Because if you look from 1999 to date, not one person has been convicted for bringing in arms and ammunition, and yet a lot of seizures has been done. It baffles me. So it shows you that these same people are within the government, within the society, within the politicians. And we, as Nigerians, we all have to stop being selfish. We have to be patriotic to the country that we call our country, which is Nigeria, and start doing police community. You get what I'm saying? Police community means anybody that comes or you see any strange act, you go and ask. Or you go to the police and you say, oh, these people have just moved into my area. We are not sure, or what's it called? But we don't do that because we are selfish. We're in our house. But guess what? We are sitting on a ticking time bomb.
So apparently our seeming integrated approach or strategy is not integrated enough.
It isn't integrated enough because the past regime, I guess they did their best, and look at the result. This present regime now that we're in, happens to be our president, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu Ahmed, which said his mandate is security and unemployment.
True.
You get what I'm saying? And for him to be, and he's a man that is well-groomed, he's fought for democracy against army regime, and people forget that. So now we're now having this, but it's going to take time, but we all employ all Nigerians to jump hands together to follow this man for us to achieve what his mandate is, which is for the common man in Nigeria to be employed and to have security. If you don't have security, there's nothing you can do in this regime. And people, you know, you have the saboteurs. You get what I'm saying? Within the government as we speak today. But I know the president very well, and I know that he's going to give it a good shot. Now that everything is clear now, it's now down that we need to address these issues. Because the lack of what's it called this thing, then his choice as the National Security Advisor, Malam Nur Rubadu, happened to be, he had done well as a policeman. He did well as the first executive chairman of EFCC, which he almost got killed. Then he dabbled into politician. So he has all the qualities to lead the security architect of this country, which I believe in him, that he will harmonize everybody, all security agencies together for a better tomorrow. And we should try and look at that. And I'm appealing to the NSA to make sure that he uses his good might, and God will strengthen him, for us to all be integrated, especially NATCOM, when we are, assented to by the president. We will now be able to give him every single detail of intelligence that we have. And another thing is that you have to look at it. You have to look at the traditional institution. We need to go back to the olden days. The traditional institution has been badly devalued. You get what I'm saying? Because it's actually the kings, the emirs, the obas that actually look at the masses. And this isn't being taken care of, because it's what they tell them or what they hear that we cannot do our job, because it's pure intelligence gathering. And with that, we will now be able to now go and work with all the security agencies that we are all in sync to fight this insurgency of illegal arms and ammunition coming into our dear country. And ECOWAS, since ECOWAS we signed in 2006, the ECOWAS Treaty, now we went for legal backing at the 9th Assembly, which was passed but wasn't assented to. And now we're hoping that Mr. President, by the special grace of God, he will assent to the bill as quick as possible.
All right, Doc, you've laid a lot of things, a couple of things, I mean, all germane on the table. Yeah, I don't even think we'll have enough time to touch on all of the issues that you've talked about. But I mean, they're quite germane. Like I said, you talked or threw up the issue of personnel. You talked about the infusion of technology. These are critical. Even, in fact, I was quite excited when you raised the issue of advocacy, because it would have been a point that I would have loved to pursue with you down the line, and why priority, I think, should be given to the issue of advocacy in what you do. But then, while you were referencing the issue of personnel, it reminded me of something NATCOM did say earlier this year, along the lines of having concluded arrangements to employ and train about 300,000 personnel in Nigeria to tackle the issue of illegal arms proliferation. Where are you with that? You seem to have inferred that it's still part of the plan. But I'm wondering what the modalities would be to make that happen. Obviously, you would need, again, like you've said, presidential approval. Would you also be requiring National Assembly consent as well, or assent? And then again, wouldn't all of these arrangements be a duplicity of function, saying that the police and other security forces already have these duties, or are already mandated by the Constitution and by law to perform these duties?
Well, you've said duplication of duties.
Yes.
I would like to explain to you that I would disagree with you with that, because NATCOM is an ECOWAS Treaty Commission, and we do not collect funds from the federal government. We're a self-funding commission, and we also plan to pay the government for their IGR. So we're totally different, because right now in Nigeria, there's no way that the economy that we're in now, that another security outfit would come. As we speak, we're 274,000 personnel in NATCOM. And yes, we do want to go above that upon the presidential approval, and we have the means of funding ourselves and also generating for the IGR of Nigeria. So it's a win-win-win for the government. And harmonizing everybody together is a win-win for the government. That's the duty of the NSA to do. So in no way are we at cost. We are coming to help because we are in every single local government around Nigeria. When we were not forced, before we got disbanded, because we had to go to the National Assembly for legal backing. So that is why we are different. And the people that we have on board are people that from 27 to date, the pioneer directors and everything, these are people that know the depth of where these things are, okay, and where it's coming from. In the past, there have been, NatForce was working with police, and they've done so many tracing from Ghana to Lome to Cotonou to Nigeria. Then from Nigeria, it goes to the east, which a lot of arrests of ammunition and guns was taken in custody by the police. So now, when you look at it, is that we're all helping ourselves. So it's not about NATCOM, police, DSS, army. It's about we are coming in to help everybody, and to help everybody by not charging Nigerian government. Nigerian government right now inherited a bad economy, so it will be very unfair for us to go and say that, oh, come, let us get this money from the government, when we know we can generate money and also give to Nigerians. Unemployment is very key, because it is not only employing people, that the youths who are jobless. It is critical to always know that these illegal arms, as we speak today, they're not only selling, people are now beginning to rent. Yeah. So it's not job for them to be making that money. So you have to totally change that perception, total reorientation, because if you take those ammunitions away from them, you now want to integrate them back into society. How are you going to do that? You have to train them and reorientate their state of mind, if you understand what I'm saying. Yes. So pretty much that's what our own scope is.
I mean, you've just referenced the DDR process there. Yeah. I mean, for like what played out after the amnesty program yes, that was declared by government for the Niger Delta and agitators there in the Niger Delta. It wasn't just about disarming the people, but there was also the other components such as reintegrating them back into society, and that took a whole lot of process, reorientation, developing of skills and all of that. I mean, Doc, I would like to pick on your brains for tap into your expertise on this issue and talk about the issue of post-conflict resolution strategies, since we're on the subject, and why as a country we continue to grapple with engendering social cohesion through community-based development. It is critical, since we are on this whole subject of peace and development. You know, my question then is, how can we deploy that effectively in building social capital in fragile or post-conflict environments like we've seen play out in some parts of Nigeria?
It should go back to what I said earlier on. Conflict is everywhere in every state in Nigeria. But I think the government focus should be on the traditional institution. When you have the traditional institution, you would be able to achieve a lot of things. Basically because they are in charge of the people. Then comes the governors of the state. They have a lot of work to do. Because you see, the conflicts you're talking about, you know, you have different types of conflict. You have religious conflict, you have political conflict, you have friends conflict, you know, all these things. But if you do not have a good security and a good traditional ruler or a good governor, how do you want to achieve that? So it is now time for every Nigerian to look at it and say, we cannot go down. We are giants of Africa. And we cannot go down. Let everybody be patriotic. You know, and it saddens me when we see certain people in certain places in government. It saddens me, it kills me. Because my background, I come from two political homes. One, my maternal grandfather was Pa Alfred Owane, who was killed by a bullet fighting the military administration of General Sani Abacha. That was Nadeko. Then Nadeko you had all of them, including Daddy Tinubu and Daddy Oshoba, who I'm very close to. They are very passionate, and the rest, and Chief BC Akonde, they are very passionate. What else do they need? They are accomplished people. But what they want to put is to put Nigeria back on the straight map. But even with that, we are still having saboteurs in government, because that is how it always is. But they are going to be in shock, because a lot of them do not know the true Daddy Tinubu. They don't know it at all. This is a man that will set us right, but we need to be patient. He's still the only man with all this conflict that is going on that is standing. All the things they've said about him, he has beaten the offside trap. So isn't it time for everybody to look, and let's be patriotic and pray for this man and follow the government?
True.
And we should release all this tension of religious, banditry, terrorists, and all these things. Because at the end of the day, it's our doorstep. So we cannot sit down and just say, oh, it is happening in the east because I'm in Abuja.
Yes.
One day you come back home and you see that is your Miga that is staying in your house with your gun. So, you know, these things are things that we have to look at critically. And I know the president, the NSA, and the new service chiefs have been into security for over 28 years. And this crop of service chiefs, I know them quite well, and I know that they are patriotic. And the president knows that they are patriotic. That's why he chose them. You know, it is not a norm. You know, if you look at it, you will know that he wants to do something special in security. Hence,
Yes.
the NSA being a policeman. If you look at that incident, he shows you he's planning, and he's, you know, a lot of the security situations in Nigeria, I'm sorry, I cannot say it on air, because obviously they too, the enemies are watching.
Yes.
I have to be very careful, but they are going to be in shock. And if we are assented to, I'm telling you, people will be brought to books. I'm not afraid of anybody. After all, my grandfather died with a bullet. If you have to kill me for fighting for Nigeria being patriotic, so may it be. It's only God that tells.
I like the passion. I'm sure Nigerians appreciate anybody who genuinely puts him or herself out there to work for our common good. But very quickly, because we're out of time, I mean, we've talked about the challenges faced by governments and that we face as a country in combating the proliferation of small and light weapons in Nigeria. But just before you go, and I would like for you to speak to this real quick, what concrete proposals do you have in mind now as the way forward that meets immediate short-term targets and that can help us also consolidate on interventions in the long term or for the long term?
Well, we have a lot of things that, as I will tell you, it would be very unwise for me as a security expert and acting director general of NATCOM to come on TV and say what we want to do to checkmate this. All I can ask the good Nigerian citizen and the youths,
yes,
they should be patient.
Okay.
And once we start and we are set it into law, you will now start seeing our actions.
Okay.
Action speaks louder than words.
And that's very correct. That's actually very true. Acting Director General, National Commission for the Coordination and Control of Proliferation of Small Arms and Light Weapons, NATCOM, Dr. Adegbenro Adejere Nuruddin. I would like to thank you so much for coming on Insight. It's been a pleasure having you here on the program. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you too, my brother.
And Elizabeth Omoru is up next.
An article by Accord reveals that political transitions can either accelerate or reverse development outcomes depending on how they are managed. Africa is experiencing ongoing political transition, whether demanded by citizens or manifested through the actions of political elites. And this could be in a conflict or non-conflict setting. How can we tackle transitional problems within Africa? What are the challenges confronting transitioning? These are some of the questions my guest, Dr. Kevin Casas Zamora, Secretary General, International IDEA, a non-governmental organization with a mandate to support sustainable democracy worldwide, will be answering on this segment. Dr. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us on Insights.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Now let's begin with an assessment of Africa's transitional style. Has this been democratic?
If for the most part, I would say no, and hence the importance of stimulating a discussion about how to bring people into constitutional processes in the context of transitions happening all over the continent, sometimes as a result of undemocratic changes in government and sometimes for other reasons. So this is what International IDEA is trying to do here as part of its global mandate to support democracy, supported by 34 countries around the world. This is what we do.
Okay, you actually said no. Why no?
Because there's a tendency of managing these processes of constitutional transition in a very top-down way.
Okay.
And what happens when this is the case is that a lot of stakeholders come to be excluded from the process and therefore have no stake in the democracy that emerges as a result of the constitutional transition process. For a democracy to be durable, all major stakeholders need to have skin in the game and need to feel that they have something to lose if the new political dispensation collapses.
Okay. Okay, before we talk about the challenges and opportunities for greater inclusivity in ongoing transitions in Africa, let's talk about International IDEA. What have you been doing to maintain or promote democracy in the West African sub-region? Let's hear from you.
Sure. International IDEA is an intergovernmental organization with 34 member states that includes 7 African countries, and we are very proud of that. And we have a significant footprint in the region. A lot of the work that we are doing is connected to democracy in Africa, and I have to think that the future of the Institute is strongly connected to the work that we are and we will be doing in the continent. We do a few things, and we have been doing a few things for the past 28 years since the Institute was created. On the one hand, we are a policy research institute that works on elections, constitutions, gender, political parties, regulation of money in politics. But we also provide technical assistance on those same issues for countries that are engaged in processes of electoral reform, constitutional reform, reforming their laws with regards to gender quotas or to campaign finance. We come and provide technical assistance, and in this case, in the work that we are doing in Nigeria, we are hoping to support institutions connected to the rule of law and anti-corruption efforts in Nigeria, and more broadly in West Africa, trying to support the work of special envoys in the context of constitutional transitions. And this with an eye towards creating more stable democratic systems in a region that by all accounts appears to have a problem of democratic stability at the moment.
Okay. Now, talking about challenges and opportunities for greater inclusivity in ongoing constitutional reforms in Africa, how do we tackle some of these challenges? And why is Africa always having challenges transiting from one government to the other?
Civil society organizations also have a seat at the table and can express their interest and demands and can play the role that they're supposed to play in a democratic system, which is to hold political actors to account.
Okay, Dr. Kevin, let's take cues from crises from Sudan, Gabon, Burkina Faso, and Niger, the recent one, where we have leaders not willing to leave power when expected. This isn't good for governance at all. How do we correct this anomaly?
This is very, very complicated. I have to think that there are many factors that allow these things to happen. I mean, one is, and this is a really deep and concerning trend, the perception on the part of a significant share of the population, very notably young people, that democracy is not responding to their demands for well-being, that there are many, pent-up demands that are being unmet by democratic systems. And this creates an opportunity for leaders that often are less than democratic, that have authoritarian intentions, for them to act and to seize power. So the question of unmet social demands is a really big factor in this.
So how can we foster post-transition stability on the continent?
We cannot force it. We have to build it by including all major stakeholders and probably by having realistic expectations that these are never linear processes. I mean, these processes of building a democratic dispensation are fraught with danger, are fraught with challenges, and often are a case of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, in the best of cases. So we have to allow for that to happen. I mean, this is a generational challenge in the best of cases. And of course, the problem is that this coexists with hugely important social demands that are not being met and that are very pressing. And this is the great challenge, that we have to, in many places in the developing world, most notably in Africa, democratic systems are being built in situations in which social demands can be enormously urgent and put political systems under constant pressure to deliver. And this is I don't have a recipe to solve that quandary, but it's a very real one. Building democracies in the developing world is a different challenge altogether than preserving democracies in the developed world.
Okay, now your organization, International IDEA, you sustain democracy in countries. Now let's take an assessment of Nigeria's democracy. Are we doing well? What should we be doing to sustain it?
Oh, every country should do more to strengthen democracy, and Nigeria is no exception. I think there are some bright spots in the democratic system of Nigeria. Let me say, for example, that according to our measurements, this is a country that has enormously vibrant civic participation. There's a very mobilized civil society that gives a lot of vibrancy to democracy in Nigeria. But the country has real challenges when it comes to the rule of law, when it comes to electoral participation, as we saw not long ago. I mean, a general election in which only 27% of the population turn up to vote is a less than pretty sight, and I hope that Nigeria and Nigerian political actors and social actors take this issue very seriously and ask themselves very difficult questions as to why this is the case, that only 27% of the population are turning up to vote. So there are issues that need to be addressed, but I think the fact that there's a civic participation in abundance bodes well for democracy in Nigeria. And by the way, this is something on which Nigeria is a part of a broader trend in Africa. What we see in Africa is again, when you look at the measurements, at the data that we have, the country does particularly well when it comes to participation, electoral and civic participation. This is, just to give you a factoid, in the top 50 countries according to participation levels in democracy in democracies everywhere, African countries occupy 9 of the top 50 positions. That doesn't happen with any other indicator.
Oh.
So Nigeria is part of a broader and positive trend.
All right, Dr. Kevin Casa-Zamora, Secretary General, International IDEA, we want to thank you so much for joining us on Insight today. Thank you for your thoughts.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And that's it on this episode of the program. We join us same time next week for more on Insights. My name is Zinamdi Adipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.